Hello, I am coming to you from downtown Mobile, Alabama, celebrating an early birthday this weekend. So, what you're going to see next is some footage of what I've already done. And this is a combination birthday old school April vlog. If you're new to my channel, hello, I'm Jen. This is my channel, Literary Love 123, where I love to read, discuss, and analyze horror through a literary lens. If you're not new to my channel, hello again. So now that we know each other, let's get back to some birthday and old school April fun. I apologize for the washer and dryer sound in the background, and I don't know if I can properly convey to you with this video just how difficult it was to get my short ass into this clawfoot tub. Hello, I am finally checking back in. It has been over a week. Now it is Monday, April 20th around noon, and I wanted to start this clip off by showing you some of the birthday gifts that I received. So the first few gifts are gifts from my best friend, the wonderful Zila. So she gave me this raven crystal, which Poe definitely approves, and it will fit nicely over on my Poe shrine. Another gift that I got from my best friend is this necklace. I'll try to see if I can hold it up better with the moon phases. She has a necklace just like this, so now we have matching necklaces. She also bought me a pack of washi tape. And I don't have the washi tape in here now because I've already used some of it in my journal, but I do have a sheet of paper that has the different designs of the washi tape. So I thought I'd show that. As you can see, it is some of the most beautiful washi tape ever. So another gift from Zila is this book called Oddities and Curiosities. It's a sticker color and activity book, and it is beautiful. So I have to show you these end pages. And it has quotes throughout. It has mazes. It has stickers. It has little articles like about crystals and about tarot. Here are just some of the stickers. So when I say it is full of oddities and curiosities, it most definitely is. And I am already part way just through looking at it. I haven't done any of the activities yet because I'm just kind of going through it right now and just appreciating what it is. Now, let me move on to another very special gift that Zila got me. So, I'll first of all say that for one of her birthdays recently, I got her I bought a book that's one of her favorite books that I had not read before, but I read it and I annotated it for her. So it's very specific, to our friendship and then to my reactions to what happened in that book. So she did the same thing for me. Now, she had read my best friend's exorcism a while back, but she got another copy and she reread it and she made it special for me by annotating it. And it's funny because Zila is the opposite of me when it comes to reading. She is not a horror fan, but I encouraged her a while back to read my best friend's exorcism. I said, I don't think it will scare you. And I really want you to read it because it has a lot to say about best friends, friendship, and friendship from childhood all the way through to late adulthood. So she did read it and she loved it. And now she made me a special best friend edition with her own notes and annotations. So I'm very excited to get back into it. I've been reading part of it with all of her annotations, and I'm so excited to read the rest. So, if you're ever trying to decide what you can give a book lover, a really special gift is to take one of their favorite books and to annotate it and then give that to them as a gift. So, a couple of other things I got for my birthday, and this is from Tim. We went shopping when we had our couples weekend for my birthday, and we went to a used bookstore. I just have to shout out the Haunted Bookshop in Mobile, Alabama, my favorite local bookstore. And I found these in the used section, very old editions of poetry criticism, one for William Blake and one for Percy Bysshe Shelley. So one of these is Blake, a collection of critical essays edited by Northrop Frye. And the other one is Shelley's Myth Making, and this is by Harold Bloom. So I was really excited to find a couple of really good poetry criticism books. Now we're going to shift gears and move over to Old School April. So I'm going to start by talking about what I've been watching for Old School April. So Tim and I had been watching the television series Hannibal, and I've seen several episodes since getting into the month of April. I think we left off on episode 2 of season 3, and I know a lot of people talk about season 3 not being very good. I mean, I don't feel as intrigued by it anymore, so we're kind of bogged down and kind of stepped away from it for now. I'm not saying that we won't go back to it, but we've been watching some other things that I'll talk about in a minute. So, also, just because of watching the Hannibal series for the first time, I got in the mood to go back and rewatch The Silence of the Lambs. So, I've watched that for Old School April. And then I watched the Hannibal movie, which has, instead of Jodie Foster as Clarice, it has Julianne Moore. And I remember loving, and I still love The Silence of the Lambs, but when I first watched the movie Hannibal, I didn't like it. But going back into it now, knowing what to expect, it's a lot different from The Silence of the Lambs. I actually enjoyed it this time. Other things that we've been watching. We watched last night, as a matter of fact, we watched 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple. We both loved it. And we also both loved 28 Years Later that, came out whenever recently. So that's been a good watching experience. We watched Alien 3 because one of my plans this April for Old School April was to rewatch the Alien franchise. Now, I especially love the first Alien, the OG, and Alien, so the first two. I have rewatched those so many, many, many times over the years that I said, okay, I'm not going to rewatch those this year. So I'm just going to start with Alien 3 and then go. And, there's a reason why I don't rewatch the other ones like I do Alien and Aliens. And after rewatching Alien 3, I said, well, now I know why I don't revisit this one as much. So that's all I'm really going to say about that. Um, then I, by myself, when Tim has been at work, I actually binge watched Something Very Bad Is Going to Happen, which is on Netflix. I just kept hearing people talk about it, and it was constantly being advertised on podcasts I listened to. So I decided, let me just go ahead and watch it. I liked it. It had me hooked, obviously, because I did binge watch it. It wasn't like the best thing I've ever seen, but if you're looking for an entertaining horror, but also quite a bit of comedy, just uncomfortable situations, uncanny eeriness, premonitions, curses, all that kind of stuff, then take a chance with Something Very Bad Is Going to Happen. The episodes are only like 30 minutes, and there were only 8 episodes in this series, so you can move through that pretty quickly. Also rewatching Twin Peaks. I just finished watching Twin Peaks The Return a couple of weeks ago. And after finishing The Return, I got in the mood to go back and start from the beginning. So that's another thing that I'm doing. I won't talk a lot about Twin Peaks in this video. I'll talk more about Twin Peaks and my experience in that universe in my personal curriculum check-in video, which will be coming out probably before this. So I should be able to link that down below. But let me get back now to old school April specific. Before I talk about books, let me talk about activities. I have gone outside and blown bubbles, so doing something from my childhood. I've had some nostalgic snacks or food. I've been eating a lot of Life cereal. I ate it a lot as a kid. It's a comfort food for me. So I have been eating a lot of Life cereal. Earlier today, I made a strawberry pie. It has to be in the fridge for a while, so I can't bring it out and show it to you. But it is a pie that my mom made a lot when I was, well, not until I was a teenager. I think that's the first time she made it. But it's this really delicious strawberry pie. So I will show it to you later after it gets made. I'll have a clip of it. I'm trying to think if there were any other like very specific nostalgic treats. I guess if you can count birthday cake, I had birthday cake at my birthday. So, yeah. Now let's look at what I've been reading. So, one of the books I was reading, and I have kind of, I have stopped it. I've paused it for now, not a DNF, it's a pause. But it's Look What You Made Me Do. It is a horror anthology based on Taylor Swift songs. So I read the first 3, and I wasn't that impressed. My favorite part so far has been the introduction by Stephanie, who is the host of the podcast Books in the Freezer. So she did the introduction, and I just want to read this quote that she wrote here. As someone who walks the line between both worlds, as a horror fan and a Swiftie, I'd argue that they share more in common than you might think. I agree, because I am a horror fan and I am a Swiftie. So the first story is based on the song Cardigan, and it's written by Neil McRobert, who is the host of the podcast, the Talking Scared podcast. So Cardigan is one of my favorite Taylor Swift songs, and I really can't talk in depth about the stories because they're so short, but I don't know. Cardigan, of the 3 I've read so far, has been my favorite, but I didn't just absolutely love it. It was fine. The next one was based on her song Sweet Nothing, and it was written by Grace R. Reynolds. And I really didn't like this one very much at all. I don't know, like I said, how much I can say because these are very short, but I was even, I guess I can say this, as short as it was, I was just really ready for that one to be over with. Um, the other one, the final one I've read so far is I Knew You Were Trouble by Chris Panettiere. And it was overly silly to me. I just thought it was very cartoonish and not my kind of vibe at all. And I know I'm sounding negative, but I have to be honest, and say there's a reason why I got bogged down and haven't picked it back up again yet. But meanwhile, can we admire this cover? It's beautiful. And I may pick it up and, try the next one before Old School April is over. It's based on Taylor Swift's song Ivy, which is another one of my favorites. And this one is written by LP Hernandez. So I'm not going to just completely say no way to it. So the next book I want to talk about is Dr. Sleep by Stephen King. So I did start reading this physically, but then I had so many other physical books to read, I switched to audio for Dr. Sleep, and I didn't really check to see how far into it I am. I am maybe halfway through, if that. It's a long book. I really am enjoying it though. It feels relevant to me in a lot of ways, especially because Dan, who was little Danny in The Shining, now he's adult Dan. He works at a hospice, which is a very, I think, perfect place for him to work because of his gift, his shine, to be able to be there with people as they pass from this life to whatever comes next. So, because my mom is currently on hospice right now and end stage Parkinson's, I'm actually finding those sections of the book to be very cathartic, and I'm finding them to be comforting to me, where I wasn't sure going into it if it would trigger me in a negative way. I am finding the opposite to be true. So if you don't know what Dr. Sleep is about, it follows little Danny Torrance from The Shining as an adult, and he comes in contact with a young girl around 12 or 13 named Abra, who also has the gift of the shine, even stronger than he had it as a kid, possibly, and definitely stronger than what he has now, because he keeps mentioning that as you reach adulthood, at times your shine or your gift may not be as potent as it was when you were a child. But Abra is under threat from this group of, they're called a True Knot, and they're not exactly vampires, but they do suck the life and the energy out of others in order to be able to continue to live. So you could kind of think of them as vampire adjacent, maybe. They also feed on fear, which means they will take children sometimes and harm them to get more pain out of the child and prolong their ability to be able to take that energy. Which, feeding on fear, it also reminds me of Pennywise, because that's what he does, feed on fear, especially the fear of children. So just that kind of connection in the works of Stephen King. So the leader of the True Knot is Rose the Hat, and she's very beautiful and very deadly and very powerful. I am enjoying every aspect of this story. Stephen King has a way of writing that really brings me completely into his world. And I know I'm not alone in that. A lot of other people share that. And one of the things, aside from the story, that stands out to me repeatedly in his work is the way that he describes storms, especially autumnal storms or winter storms, snowstorms. And it's a precursor often to something terrible that's going to happen, some dread building, tension filled time, foreshadowing for ominous things yet to come. Yes, definitely enjoying Dr. Sleep. So the book that I'm currently physically reading is The Haunted Houses She Calls Her Own by Gwendolyn Keist, who, if you've been around my channel for long, you know that Gwendolyn Keist is one of my all-time favorite authors. So this book is about different ways of women being haunted. I'm only, I think, 3 stories in, so I will give you the synopsis on the back since I'm not very far into it. Celebrated author Gwendolyn Keist cordially invites you to explore the haunted houses she calls her own. Enter a world possessed by recriminations from bygone eras where the regrets and malice of years past still reverberate and shape our doom. Here, morally complex women and queer anti-heroines swim against the current of a social structure that serves as a spectral prison in these layered stories of the weird and the other. Known for crafting bold metafictional narratives that grapple with challenging social issues, Keist's unwavering voice deftly weaves a siren song of resilience and survival. Included among the short stories are The 8 People Who Murdered Me, an excerpt from Lucy Westenra's diary. That's the next story, and I can't wait to read it. The Girls from the Horror Movie, The Sea Witch of the World's Fair, and other riveting new Gothic tales of body horror, the supernatural, and unapologetic resistance. So let me talk about the stories that I have read so far. So the first one is A New Mother's Guide to Raising an Abomination. This one made me feel both emotional and teary-eyed and empowered at the same time. Again, these stories are really short, so I can't say a lot, but I will say about A New Mother's Guide to Raising an Abomination. If women are going to be abused, as we know they are, and continue to see all of the ways that plays out in society, then perhaps an abomination or a monster is what we will and maybe even should become. Then the next story is, let me see if it's all listed in the front. That way I won't have to keep flipping. It is. Yay. So the next story is The Girls from the Horror Movie. And I had read that in a previous collection. And again, I loved it this time, just like I did the first time. So it's about twin girls who played a role in a horror movie when they were little. One role, as because of child labor laws, you're probably familiar with the fact that a lot of times for young children, twins will be cast in a role so they can both work and they won't have to, the producers, directors, whatever, won't have to be worried about overworking one child. So each of the girls had a different experience in the horror movie. One of the girls embraced it and wants to continue in that world, wants to still be the star, wants the spotlight. So she keeps going to horror conventions, even as an adult, when people aren't paying that much attention to her anymore. And her twin sister had a very different reaction and did not enjoy playing that role in the film. And so she's become much more reclusive and doesn't go out to the conventions and wants really to be left alone And she also doesn't want her sister going out to those conventions. So it becomes a story about the tug of war and that push and pull to be separate identities, to be together, and the dynamics that play out between those two sisters. Then the next one that I read is The Sea Witch of the World's Fair. That one was so much fun. And it's a story about a woman who is playing a mermaid at an attraction at the World's Fair. But is she just a woman, or is she also something else? And it also has a lot to say with women's autonomy and men trying to control women's bodies, and what might happen if a woman won't be controlled. And if a woman maybe underneath her skin might be also something else besides just a woman. So, anyway, I'm having a wonderful time with the haunted houses she calls her own. And then I am also reading very slowly, though, reading my way through Laura's Ghost, Women Speak About Twin Peaks. And this was written or edited by Courtney Stallings with a foreword by Laura Palmer herself, Cheryl Lee. But again, I don't want to say a lot about Laura Palmer or Laura's Ghost in this video because I'll be doing more of that in my personal curriculum check-in video. So I believe that is all I have to say right now for Old School April, but I am having a wonderful time, as I always do every Old School April, and I will see you in the next check-in. Hopefully it won't be over a week from now, but bye for the moment. Hello, it's Thursday, April 23rd, around 10 in the morning, and I'm going to go ahead and give you a heads up. I may ramble during this check in. I am exhausted. As most of you know, if you are familiar with my channel, my mom is currently in hospice for end stage Parkinson's, and this week she has taken a turn for the even worse than what she already was. I don't really want to give all the details here, but suffice it to say, I am exhausted in every way that a person can be exhausted. But going to go ahead now and talk about what I've been up to since the last check-in. So I did finish two more stories in The Haunted Houses She Calls Her Own by Gwendolyn Kais. Still loving this collection. So far, my favorite in the collection is this one, The 8 People Who Murdered Me, which is an excerpt from Lucy Westenra's diary. So Lucy, of course, from Bram Stoker's Dracula, is who this is referring to. And Lucy has been one of my favorite characters for a long time. This short story actually inspired Gwendolyn. This is one that was printed already, and it inspired her to write her novel, Reluctant Immortals, which retells and reimagines the story of Dracula's Lucy and Jane Eyre's Bertha Mason. I love Reluctant Immortals. As a matter of fact, I was so inspired by Lucy and Bertha's stories in Reluctant Immortals that I wrote a grad school essay for my British Lit seminar on the characters of Bertha and Lucy as the so-called bad women of their novels. Anyway, but I do want to talk about the 8 people who murdered me. So one of the aspects of this that I absolutely loved was in the opening. In the second paragraph, Gwendolyn writes, for how you came to me when I'm by myself, a lonely girl in a goblin market where some treasures are best left undiscovered. So that reference to goblin market is referring to the poem by Christina Rossetti titled Goblin Market. And it tells the story of two women, one who goes out and visits this forbidden goblin market, and she tastes the wares of the goblins, and so she is doomed because of her so-called sin. And so this really speaks a lot to that Victorian concept of the angel in the house versus the fallen woman. So there was a poem titled Angel in the House or Angel of the House by Coventry Patmore that extol the virtues of women who stay at home and care for their spouses or children and stay within that domestic space and don't venture out. So Lucy is cast in that same kind of way. If you have read Bram Stoker's Dracula, you know that Lucy has three suitors, and she says at one point, I wish I could marry all three. And she's the one who succumbs to the temptations of Dracula. And so she's seen as this kind of bad woman, which is one of the reasons why I absolutely love Lucy. So this story specifically is about Lucy and about how all of the people in her life, including her best friend, her mother, her suitors, her doctor, how all of them are responsible for what happens to her. And even once she dies, they still don't leave her alone. In the novel, they have to go back. They have to stake her, right? They have to cut off her head and make sure that she's dead because they don't want her impurity to affect everybody. I mean, certainly it's cast through the lens of vampirism, but if we dig a little deeper, we see that it's really about Lucy being a so-called infection. We can't let her infect anyone else with her impurity. And so this story just speaks to that and just speaks to the way that society condemns certain types of women who dare to exercise their autonomy and agency to live the lives that they want. It's very good. The next story in the collection is Melting Point, and it has to do with a nuclear reactor damage. It opens with, on the morning the 3 Mile Island nuclear reactor turns to liquid, I'm sitting at my kitchen table wishing I was someone else. So yes, it is about this disaster, but it's also about being trapped in an abusive relationship, whether that be a parental abuse relationship or a spousal abuse. And it's about how two women in those situations find each other and find freedom. And the next story, which I haven't read yet, but the next one is titled Her Skin a Grim Canvas. Now, that title has me excited already. So I've also been continuing to listen to the audiobook for Dr. Sleep. I mentioned in a previous check-in that I initially was reading it physically, but then I had so many other books that I needed to read, so I decided to just do the audio. And I don't think I shared any specific quotes in the last check-in, but I just want to talk about Danny as an adult. Now he's referred to as Dan, but how he's dealing with PTSD from the events of The Shining and how he has worked very hard to overcome his alcoholism. So this is a comment in that realm of PTSD and alcohol addiction. Booze tampered down The Shining, knocked it unconscious, but he wasn't sure the flies were even a part of The Shining. They came when they would, drunk or sober. He thought again, I need to get out of here. He thought again, I wish I were dead. So Danny is still haunted by the events of the Overlook Hotel. And not only is he haunted by that, he's haunted by the memory of his father, but he's also dealing with that very tangible haunting that his father passed down to him, that haunting of alcoholism. It ruined Danny's family. And at this point, when I noted this quote, this is before Dan became sober. And when Dan thinks, I wish I were dead, he sees no other way out of this hell. He can't escape his past. His present is miserable, and he thinks his future is also going to be the same. And so he finds, at this moment, that he feels there's no other way out except for death. But he does get sober, and things do start looking up. And then another passage I wanted to talk about, again, with this concept of haunting. So we have synchronicity here, right? I'm reading The Haunted House That She Calls Her Own, and I'm reading Dr. Sleep, both which have to do of haunting and the different, manifestations of what a haunting can be. So one of the quotes that I also wanted to make note of is, maybe you can put the things in the Overlook. I got a tab. Hold on. Maybe you can put the things from the Overlook away in lock boxes, but not memories. Never those. They're the real ghost. So true. So true. Your memories are, that's something that you cannot escape from. And that really hits close to me right now with my mom and this stage of life where she is, because even though her physical body is still here, she's already gone. So it's this very haunted space. I'm haunted by it. My mom is in this liminal space herself. She's really between the realm of the living and the realm of the dead right now. And that idea is constantly showing up to me in what I'm reading and what I'm watching. And it's, I'm grappling with it in, of course, a very emotional way, but also in a literary way, this idea of a body being a haunted space. And I feel like that's what I'm experiencing and what my mom is experiencing at this time right now. So some of the time when I'm reading, especially Dr. Sleep, it is challenging. And sometimes I have to pause my audiobook for a minute and give myself a little time to process this idea of death, and being in the space between life and death. So that is where I am right now as far as reading and life. I have been continuing also with my rewatch of Twin Peaks. I am currently on the episode where we have just found out who killed Laura Palmer. So I'm in season 2. And that is such a heavy story. Laura, again, speaking of haunting, as I've mentioned previously, she haunts me. Her story just lingers in me. And I am working on writing about all of that connection I feel to Laura. So that's it for this check-in. Thank you for hanging in with me. I will be vlogging and sharing tomorrow night. My daughter and her husband are coming over, and we're going to have our first annual monthly movie and snack theme night, horror movies, of course. So tomorrow night we are going to be watching the original Scream, and we're having Jiffy Pop, pizza, green grapes, bloody cupcakes, and strawberry ice cream and cones. And since my daughter's pregnant, she is making a mocktail for herself, and I am making a cocktail for the rest of us, all themed around the movie Scream. So this check-in was a bit heavy, but the next one should be lighthearted. So thank you for watching so far. I'm excited to continue with this vlog, and I will see you in the next check-in.
What's the matter, Sydney? You look like you've seen a ghost.
Hey, it is Wednesday, April 29th. I am just leaving the doctor's office. I had to have lab works done today. Nothing's wrong. It's just the precursor to next week's appointment with just my general practitioner. So now I am headed over to get some breakfast and coffee because I had to do fasting labs. So I'm hungry and I need my caffeine. So I will see you in the next check-in. Hello, everyone. It is Friday, May 1st. Beltane blessings to you all. I am wrapping up this old school April / birthday vlog today. And the first book I want to talk about is The Haunted Houses She Calls Her Own by Gwendolyn Kais. So I've been talking about it some throughout the vlog, and I finished it a couple of days ago. And because it is a short story collection and there are a lot of short stories in this collection, I'm just going to talk about some of the ones that stood out to me as I came to the last several stories in the book. So, one of the stories I want to talk about is The Last Video Store on the Left. And it is about a woman who is running this video store, literally the last one left in the area. So it's a very kind of strange duality there of being in this present time where most people use streaming services, but she still has this one video store. She also lives at the video store. So her life is connected to this space. If you've read The Haunting of Velkwood by Gwendolyn Keist, not that the plot was similar, but there was a vibe that was similar there. The idea of kind of being in the past, but also while the present is going on around you. And of course, there's a nod, obviously, to Wes Craven's The Last House on the Left with this title. But one of the things that I just wanted to talk about is my own personal response to a quote from The Last Video Store on the Left. So a woman comes in to visit this owner of the video store, and she's a reporter. She wants to interview this woman because she's got this, this, what I'm trying to think of the right word, but the owner of this video store is still going strong to, strong to some degree, I guess, in a time where you don't really see video stores anymore. So she's obviously got an interesting story. So the reporter wants to interview her, and she doesn't really want to be interviewed, but she's also at the same time attracted to this reporter. So they begin to see each other, and because the owner of the video store wants to see what this reporter's made of, and kind of wants to see if she can possibly trust her or not, she decides to show her the film Eraserhead. And I love this quote. Instead, you choose a DVD from a nearby stack, the Criterion edition of Eraserhead. If anything will scare off a nice, normal girl like her, then it will be David Lynch. I loved that because a lot of you may know I am currently in a deep dive into David Lynch. So I loved the way that this connection was made. And it's true. Like, if you want to test what somebody's made of, then show them Eraserhead and see what happens. Another interesting thing I wanted to talk about in this collection is several of the stories are done in second person, which does not always work well. But when Gwendolyn Keist does it, she pulls it off. She pulls it off beautifully. So I'll just read the first couple of lines from The Last Video Store on the Left so you can see how she constructs this second person narrative that works well. You're kneeling in the horror section, restocking the entire Friday the 13th series, when the bell dings above the front door and she appears in the aisle next to you. Are you Callie Mayfair? She asks when she sees your blue uniform, the only employee in the whole building. That's me, you say, as you stare up at her, the fluorescent lights glinting off the gold in her hair. Fantastic story. So the next story that I'm going to talk about, and again, I'm not talking about all of them. I'm just going to talk about the ones where I have actually tabbed quotes. Lost in Darkness and Distance. I don't know if this is really a spoiler because I feel like if you read the title and you're familiar with Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, then you probably have some kind of inkling about what this story might be about. But then Gwendolyn Keist throws in this extra part that I never would have connected. So this may be slight spoiler, so skip ahead a few minutes if you don't want any slight spoiler. So the opening of Lost in Darkness and Distance starts with this: the slice of a guillotine, the roar of a crowd, and then everything goes black. They say a disembodied head can retain its faculties for up to half a minute. She unfortunately knows this to be true. So we open up with Marie Antoinette after her death, yet somehow she's still alive, not in your typical sense, but like this presence. Her spirit is still there. Her body's there, although it literally is without the head. So this story connects Marie Antoinette and Mary Shelley in a Frankenstein kind of type of relationship. It blew my mind. Fantastic. Like, I just loved this story so much, and I never would have thought about putting those two women together. Oh my God, it's so good. I know I am just raving, but that's kind of what I do with Gwendolyn Kais, if you didn't know that. One of my favorite lines also from Lost in Darkness and Distance is this: ghosts have no timetable. And before that, I'll just read what comes before that sentence too. Seasons slide past her broken body, the rain and snow and ice prickling her skin, thorns slicing open the bottoms of her feet. The days soon dissolve into years, into decades even. But that's no matter to her. Ghosts have no timetable. Woo. And the next story that I want to talk about is this still Lost in Darkness and Distance? Yes, this made me laugh so much because Marie Antoinette does come upon Mary and Percy Shelley in Geneva, along with Lord Byron and John Polidori, Lord Byron's physician, and Mary's stepsister or half sister, Claire Claremont. If you know the story of the construction of Frankenstein, it was written in Geneva when they were all there for the summer. However, it really became not a summer at all. It was a winter type summer, storms, cold weather. They were stuck inside. They decided to have a contest to see who could write the scariest ghost story. So that's when Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein. But if you're familiar too with Lord Byron, he was very much a playboy, like the bad boy of the Romantics. One of his uh, partners described him as mad, bad, and dangerous to know. So I really had to laugh at this line because Lord Byron is coming on to Marie Antoinette. And in this quote, she's rather convinced Lord Byron would make love to a candle holder if it gleamed properly in his direction. I had to laugh. I loved that so much. Okay. So let's see. Then we have this final story: the haunted houses she calls her own. And this story is written from the perspective of the Black Dahlia after she's died. And it really speaks about our relationship to true crime and why we have this obsession. Why don't we let those who are deceased rest? And the way that Gwendolyn writes this is a very sympathetic look at Betty, is her name. I actually, this is kind of speaking to my own unawareness of her name, and think too that speaks to the way that we forget about victims. I've only known her as the Black Dahlia. Her real name was Elizabeth and Betty to friends, at least according to this story. And I think to give you a better perspective or an understanding of what I'm saying, I want to read a few quotes from here. The haunted houses keep coming for Betty until there are too many to count. A backyard shed, a motel room, an empty doctor's office. It seems like any old place could become an abattoir, an ideal locale to butcher a young woman. She wonders if this is how it always goes. Is everywhere just a haunted house in the making? And then another. But you can't help yourself, can you? You've been watching her for so long. We all have. The whole world's never been able to take their eyes off her. She was nobody until she was somebody, the grotesque inverse of the starlet she longed to become. Her greatest role was to play herself, to play dead. Does that mean we're all her murderers now? Are we accomplices to what's become of her? And then Gwendolyn Keist flips the narrative point of view and puts herself in that position, as speaking as if she is Elizabeth. You know my name. You know my face. I'm the girl in the picture, the girl who never gets to stop smiling, never gets to rest, no matter how hard I try, no matter how loud I scream. You never heard me until it was too late. Everyone is always too late. This collection, I'm sure you can tell, was a 5-star collection for me. I loved every single one of the stories in this collection, and this idea of haunting and the different manifestations of haunting, particularly from a feminist or a film presenting point of view. Is a powerful collection, and I highly, highly recommend it. So, the next book I want to talk about is Mapping the Interior by Stephen Graham Jones. I was a little anxious going into this book because I have a very hit and miss relationship with Stephen Graham Jones. I either tend to absolutely love his work or swing in the opposite direction. This one, thankfully, was one that I absolutely loved. So it is a coming of age grief horror about a 12-year-old boy who is grappling with his father's death. His father died when he was 4, so he has limited memory of his father. And he believes that he sees his father's ghost. So he begins to map out his house to search for his father in different places. He begins to believe possibly that there's some sort of cocoon like thing under his home. They live in a modular home. Some sort of cocoon like thing that his that birthed his dad back to life, so to speak. It's very short. My version was like 96 pages. Also, if you're familiar with Stephen Graham Jones, you know sometimes trying to give a synopsis of his work can be difficult. So this story moved me to tears because it is about a young boy who had one image of his father, a more idealized image. However, as he begins to encounter this presence and have certain experiences and conversations with his mother, he begins to see that his father was not this ideal person. And it really is any person, is any parent, right? So it's about coming to terms also with what you think of your father and what may be the actual person your father is. So I obviously tabbed a lot of things, so I won't go through all of them, but I wanted to talk about some of them. And Stephen Graham Jones is a Native American, so you also have Native American folklorish elements to this story and points of view that are uniquely Native American. And I think sometimes people who don't know uh, the folklore and don't know about the culture can struggle more. I obviously am about as white as you can get, so I take time to dig in and read about and try to learn more about the culture so I can gather, more from what Stephen Graham Jones is presenting. So I just want to read a couple of things. And one of the things that he writes is, that's how you talk about dead people, though, especially dead Indians. It's all about squandered potential, not actual accomplishments. And then on the following page, in death, he had become what he never could in life. So, speaking about his father, again, that kind of idealized view. Freya, do you want to get out? Or do you want to come over here? Yeah, sorry. We have cats here. That's how it goes. So I really I wanted to talk about that too. The way that we often do idealize people in death. It's very cliche, but I'm thinking also in terms of what I was just talking about in the haunted houses she calls her own. But this comment that everyone seems to say when someone is murdered, right? She lit up a room. So very much this kind of idealized perspective. Then another aspect that I wanted to mention, and also this is partially a reader response theory type of experience for me, because my mom is in an end stage Parkinson's. So she not only is physically, just lost most of her physical faculties, but she's also lost her mental faculties. And this quote really got to me. I think when you're talking about your dad, you kind of go back in years. The more you become a kid, the more he gets to be the dad, right? And then I wanted to share a couple of examples of just stunning writing that Stephen Graham Jones does. This is a passage when our main character has gone under the house and is trying to find his dad there. I was crying and snuffling and hugging myself, having to keep my head low so it wouldn't collect all the web spun under the floor of the living room. Which, if this was the underside of the living room, then what did that make it, right? I wouldn't say it out loud, even in my head. So just, thinking in terms of being under the living room, right? If you flip that, then it being a room for the dead. Like I never would have thought about that, writing something like that flip side, but just the way that Stephen Graham Jones can put these images and these metaphors into his writing. This is another one. This is still about being under the house. The whole way there, it was just dirt and the old dead weeds and grass that must have been live weeds and grass when this house got delivered here. They turned into mummies of themselves, mummies that crumbled into less than dust when I touched them. Just beautiful. So if you are interested in coming of age horror, grief horror, and you want a short, powerful read, then I do recommend Mapping the Interior. And so the last book I want to talk about, I'm only going to talk a little bit about because I will possibly be discussing this on a live show with the people I buddy read it with, and that is Dr. Sleep by Stephen King. So I read some of it physically, and then I listened to most of it on audio. And it's the sequel to The Shining, and I did talk about it a little bit in this vlog already, but I will say the way that this brings back the experiences of The Shining now that Dan is an adult, it speaks about, again, what you picture your father as and what your father may really be. So I felt like it could almost be paired in a way with mapping the interior. So I don't want to say a lot about Dr. Sleep. I did give it 5 stars. I am really glad that Stephen King decided to write about what happened to young Danny when he grew up and how his past still lingered with him, but how that could also be healing for him. And also, it had a lot to say about becoming a mentor or the older generation, much in the way that Dick Halloran in The Shining mentored and walked Danny through living life with a gift or curse, as some may see it, such as The Shining. And Dan, as an adult, had the opportunity to do the same for a child, and that connection and that passing down of knowledge was done very well. Rose the Hat is one of the most compelling Stephen King villains. Can't wait to talk more about her in the live show with those who buddy read it with me. So be on the lookout for that. So I also just quickly want to share one of the crafts I did and shout out M at Ink Drinking M for sharing this. So this is for, I think she says it came from Monday Mandala, and it is a Rock Your Reads. So for Old School April, M and I were both on the Record Store Rockers team. So this was just a perfect craft, a perfect activity to do and make very pretty. So, TV shows, I watched a lot of Twin Peaks. I won't talk about that here because that's going to be more so in my personal curriculum videos, which I can link down below. I will have a final one coming up at the end of May to talk about my first semester, or not semester, I did quarter spring. My spring semester of personal curriculum, which was the first time I did that. Trying to think, I did watch Scream, as I mentioned before. Loved it. Watched one of the Alien movies. Did not get around to everything I planned to do, but that's typical. All in all, I definitely enjoyed, especially my reading experiences this Old School April. A lot of great experiences with 3 5-star books. So let me know if you participated in Old School April. What was your favorite part of Old School April? What team were you on? If you did not participate in Old School April, let me know what your favorite book was that you read in April. I want to say thank you so much to Kelsey for another wonderful year of OSA. And I also want to say thank you to all of you who watched this video. I know it's a long one. So please be sure to hit like, subscribe, hit that bell so we can keep on talking about books and whatever else comes to our minds. Bye.